It can sometimes be hard to make sense of everything that we have announced and released so quickly. And let's be honest, simplicity and naming, well, they haven't always been our strong suit. Anyone else remember Windows XP 64-bit edition for 64-bit extended systems? Just rolls off the tongue.
Okay, I'm sorry. Wait a minute. That's my job. When there's a corporate vice president at Microsoft and everyone's best friend, Jared Spataro, no less, that's openly criticizing Microsoft branding, it's time to resurface and set the record straight. So Sean, with that, today on MS Refresh, it's all AI all the time at Microsoft Ignite 2023. Azure was the star of the show, even if you didn't know it. Plus, lots of examples of additional premium licensing. All that and more. Subscribe to stay in the know. This is the MS Refresh Show. Hi there, and welcome back.
We're back, baby.
To the Matt and Sean 365 Refresh Show. This is episode 84, covering the highlights of Microsoft Ignite 2023. Coming to you from the East Coast, my name is Matt Wade.
And coming from the Pacific Northwest for at least 2 more days, I'm Sean Bugler.
That's still the West Coast, pal.
Is it?
I mean, very much so, yes.
I'm gonna co-pilot that, and I'll get back to you.
Yeah, right. So, hey, man, I haven't seen you in a long time. No, that's not true.
That's not true. I feel like I've seen you a lot.
People have not seen us in a long time.
People have not seen us in a long time together, not counting your wedding, which was beautiful.
Only because you were there.
Oh, thank you. That's it's nice to be back. It's nice to be back here. It's amazing how many people noticed we were gone. like I don't know if you got the same like DMs that I was getting.
Absolutely did, yes.
Yeah,
and I felt bad not responding, but I didn't want to set expectations.
I did respond to a couple of people in the run up to Ignite because you and I had been talking about this being our resurgence, but we were still on the fence until my friend and yours, Jared Spataro, pushed us over the edge.
I mean, how do you take the beautiful baby defenseless Windows XP and just kick it like that? Everybody's favorite operating system.
After all it's done for us.
I know. Some people still running it.
So Matt, what's if you could give us the the elevator pitch of what your life has been like in the last, we've been offline for what, 7 months, 8 months?
Something like that.
Yeah.
We, you and I were lucky enough to present at the Microsoft 365 conference in May. We are lucky enough to do the same again, actually, this coming April,
register.
May. Yes. This time we don't have to compete. It's not Wade 100 versus Bugler 100. We actually have Refresh 100 to save $100 on your registration for the Microsoft 365 conference in Florida, late April, early May.
That's right. So check a link in the show notes and register using Refresh 100. And Matt, that's not entirely true. We do still have our individual codes as well.
Crap, you're right. That's true. I didn't want to say that out loud because I don't want to lose to you.
You would not.
But I will say. So let's see. Wedding, work, lots of work, house, all kind of came at the same time.
That's right. And you bought a house.
Yeah. We're working on renovating it and all that kind of stuff. And this sweatshirt actually has lots of paint on it. You just can't see it because the framing is perfect. Like that kind of stuff. And once we went to the conference, after that, it was like we had a great time. And whew, all right, we're
back to business. Yeah, because that was the calm before the storm. We were actually not even entirely sure you were going to be able to make that conference. But it worked out. The session went great. We got a lot of really great feedback on the candid perspective that I think you and I are both known for with respect to Copilot and what it was going to mean for the modern world of work. And we're going to bring it back. We're bringing it back with new and improved information about what we know about Copilot. There's a lot of really interesting insight from the new Work Index report that Microsoft just dropped today about Copilot and their early learnings with that. So there's some really interesting stuff that we're going to be talking about there. So again, if you haven't already thought about registering for the M365 conference, you should absolutely do so.
Do
Refresh
up.
100. Show up, please.
Definitely. Well, yeah, we did the conference. We also saw each other in at SPS, or sorry, M365 days or Community Days, New York City over the summer.
right.
We took that show on the road. You came, you and your beautiful wife came to my wedding, which was a great time. And then not only that, but you hung out with us on my honeymoon, which there are a few people in the world, but like Sean, I would let you bother me at any point in my life, including any time on my honeymoon. And you
We
did.
should clarify that you guys were on your honeymoon and I happened to be in Orlando at the exact same time attending the Gartner Executive IT Conference.
Details, schmetails. You are not an executive IT person. I'm sorry. This is ridiculous.
I'm an IT leader, thank you very much.
Well,
and Gartner was thrilled to have me.
Well, because you people pay so much for Gartner services. But anyway, point being, we're very happy to be back, and it was a very good number of events we got to go to, and we look forward to future events. But today's topic is Microsoft Ignite and just the flurry of AI announcements, and probably a little bit of frustration on how we don't really hear about anything else other than Copilot. Nobody can really use Copilot unless you got $100,000+ to just shovel out just to try it if you have an organization of 300+ on E3, E5 licenses and all that kind of stuff. But there was some really cool stuff, and I think this is going to be a paradigm step for industry, the world, potentially. It's just going to take a while for people to really get there, try it out, and see what it's going to turn into. So, Sean, I'm going to let you take the lead on this one because you are actually at Ignite in person.
I am at Ignite, yes.
We can tell because you brought a potato with you to take your video today. And I am comfortably at home. My cat is right there outside of the frame. My video is perfect. I got my beautiful background, all that kind of stuff. But because you are really in the thick of it, I'm going to let you take the lead today. So
You're such a giver.
This is the news.
No, absolutely. And Matt, I think you said it best, that this is an Ignite for the record books, not just because of the number of times they said AI, but because of the number of things they announced that nobody can touch. I would argue that easily 70% of the things that they talked about, that they announced, are either things that don't have any immediate relevance to the average modern worker. And for those areas that do, Copilot being a great example, at least in terms of all the things that they were highlighting, they're still restricting the Copilot licensing to organizations that are willing to shell out for a minimum of 300 users. We'll talk a lot about that. But you mentioned it in the stinger, and I want to start here at the top with Azure. Azure was, whether you knew it or not, even if you paid attention to the keynote, whether you knew it or not, Azure was the star of the show. That is where we saw the most interesting, kind of surprising announcements made by Microsoft. Now, there were some obvious ones. I think one of the big ones to lead off with is, Microsoft is getting all the new shiny OpenAI generative models that OpenAI just announced last week at OpenAI Dev Day, their first annual conference as a big person company. So GPT-4 Turbo with Vision, which is a top tier name. No wonder Microsoft decided to, yep, that's a thumb. Good job, computer. Matt and I have both realized that we're both running macOS Ventura, which gives us this silly nonsense.
Well, mine is fireworks. Yours is, I'm not sure what that is. Okay.
So GPT-4 Turbo with Vision. So their fastest version of GPT-4 to date with new image recognition technology combined, which is super exciting. DALL-E 3, their next generation text to image generation model. And GPT-4 with fine tuning, the ability to customize GPT-4 with your own individual context and information. So there's a lot of really exciting stuff there. Just Microsoft getting access to that through their Azure OpenAI services. But they did announce a bunch of other interesting and surprising Azure capabilities. And there's a couple, Matt, I'm just going to run off two of them to start here. And I want to get your take. The first one is what they're calling personal voice. This idea of being able to feed 60 seconds of somebody talking, and Azure will then take that and morph it into a fully blown voice model that you can then use to generate things that person didn't say. So for example, I might feed any number of videos that you've created over the last 10 years and get you to say some terrible things about the state of world affairs. Oh, God.
Nickelback is good.
Yeah. There's also for the record books. They also announced what they're calling their text-to-speech avatar. So this concept has existed for a long time, and really it's the idea of feeding to an AI model text and having not just the text itself synthesized with voice, but then having that voice matched to a realistic human persona. So there's a number of startups out there. One that comes to mind is a company that was founded by I want to say he was the head of visual effects for the Avatar movies. No
big deal.
He made a startup based on all the things that they learned creating these humanistic models in Avatar. And they now have an AI startup that does basically what Microsoft is now swooping in to do with Azure. Do you have any real world scenarios where you think that's going to be useful?
Oh, I think any customer service scenario where you want to have like a pleasant looking person that is dressed the way that you want them to be, that can respond in a nice, pleasant voice, or customizable experience, right? So, especially if you have data on the individual you're working with, you can make that person reflect the individual that they're going back and forth with to make them feel most comfortable, right? Whether it's a demographic thing, gender thing, race thing, cultural thing. If you can make that person have the best experience possible, then that means that they're more likely to interact and, more importantly, to a company, a capitalistic company, spend money.
Right, 100%. Kind of helps lower the guard. It has infinite knowledge, especially with everything we're seeing with generative AI. Now the ability to respond dynamically to a conversation as it ebbs and flows, still keeping on to the script, following the rules until we jailbreak it. But yeah, you're right. Customer service experiences. This is a pure play move into the customer service space. There are airports all over the world that use this kind of technology, police stations, hospitals. You walk in, you talk to not reception, but a reception, synthesized humanoid, which is interesting.
Wait, is that common or is that just a Bay Area thing? I don't think I've ever seen that before.
There are a couple of airports that I've been to that have those. I believe there's a couple of police stations that have partnered up with that startup that I mentioned earlier.
Do you visit these police stations a lot?
100%. Yeah, they know me really well.
So you're just doing case study evaluation. I understand.
Yeah, of course. It's definitely that, and I stay there for days, sometimes weeks at a time, to understand.
The food is just so good.
The food. So there was that. There was also a lot of really interesting announcements that Microsoft made about what they're doing with video. So the allure of generative AI has kind of waned, and we've turned our attention to what can we do with it. Right, we're starting to get tactical about it. Then there was this idea that these same generative AI models could see and create pictures, understand what we're looking at, not just from there's a cat on a table, but why is the cat on the table funny? To extrapolate further beyond that. And now, as that's become a little bit more accepted and commonplace, Microsoft is taking it a step further with video. So they announced through Azure video to text summarization. They also announced support for video content search. So this idea of all the videos that are uploaded into, think about SharePoint. There are tons and tons of videos on there. And sure, you can transcribe them, but transcribing is not necessarily the end all be all. It doesn't necessarily capture everything that's actually happening in a video. So video content search is going to be a really big deal, especially as we get further and further into generating tons and tons more content through virtual meetings and otherwise. Is that something that's going to be useful to you, Matt?
Oh, so I'm a big knowledge management guy, and
sure.
I remember at one company I worked for a while, they were real big on taking doing the videos of the retirees so that they could tell their story, and the story would be something you pass along, lessons learned, just best practices, things like that. and there's just hundreds or thousands of these videos that were just sitting there for decades that nobody watched, because why would you, right? You had to actively go to a library or a repository that had it. And like, even just having generative speech to text captions was a huge win, because, oh my God, now that I can finally actually find stuff. Now, Stream and SharePoint still don't actually retrieve video captions in the Microsoft search experience yet. It's supposed to be soon. But you can search the captions or the transcript of the video in the video player itself. So if you're in the video and you know that the topic is right, you can look. But if Microsoft Search can just come back with, or Copilot with, here's that video from that guy from that, again, we recorded it in 1989, but we're able to transcribe it. We're able to analyze it today and tell you everything about it. Like, that's fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, that's huge. And so really interesting to see. And we're just scratching the surface. And Matt, I know that we didn't necessarily touch on it too heavily, but these are just our first brushes with this. You and I are going to come back in a couple of weeks with a much deeper dive on a lot of the different announcements that took place over here at Ignite. These are just some of the ones that just jumped out to us. Speaking of jumping out to us and surprising us even, Matt, what comes to mind when I say the words SharePoint Premium?
It sounds like a mask on top of something called Syntex that already was a mask on top of something called, Microsoft Syntex, which was already a mask on top of SharePoint Syntex. And it just sounds like it's just one more premium feature that's going to be on top of the existing licensing models that just makes licensing so much more simple than it needs to be.
They finally did it, Matt. They finally decided they were going to figure out a way to monetize SharePoint. Like, it shouldn't be a surprise. Like, we were already seeing them start to figure out ways to monetize it through SharePoint Advanced Management, through Syntex. But they all felt, one, they felt disjointed. And two, it felt nickel and dimey. Like, they were coming at us from all these different angles, trying to enhance very specific pieces of SharePoint that just didn't necessarily make a ton of sense on their own. So enter SharePoint Premium, or as you jokingly referred to before we started recording, Syntex Plus. They're bringing all of that together. They're bringing the intelligent content services that Syntex brought to bear together with the existing SharePoint Advanced Management features, and they've packaged it in a way that hopefully makes a little bit more sense. We don't have a sense of what pricing is going to look like, and Microsoft has already gone out and said that there's going to be two kinds of pricing models associated with SharePoint Premium. The first is going to be pay as you go, so kind of modeled after the existing Syntex licensing changes that we saw just a couple of months ago. And the other is going to be on a per seat basis, so being able to pay organizationally for butts and seats and just getting the whole kit and caboodle is the understanding that we've got right now. So what are some of the things that you get with SharePoint Premium? So there's e-signature, right? And enter thumb up here in just a second. I'm sure there it goes. So e-signature. Now Microsoft has gone above and beyond to try and really emphasize they're not trying to compete with the DocuSigns, the Boxes, the Hello Signs of the world, the Adobe Signs of the world. And those are all still close partners that have the same kind of access that this Syntex e-signature, this SharePoint Premium e-signature is going to bring along for the ride. But if you don't have any of those, you're a small business, for example, and you need the ability to sign digitally, this is a plus, right?
Agreed.
They also are bringing along annotations, so advanced annotations with an enhanced file viewer for files stored in SharePoint. Now, Matt, when we think about what an enhanced file viewer means for the SharePoint experience, I mean, really, like, the file viewer as it stands right now is pretty spare, right? It's, you can open up the file in its associated application if it's an Office file, increasingly with third-party files as well, recently announced. You can download it. You can share it. That's about it, though, right? Mm-hmm. But this idea of being able to annotate, to be able to scribble on a file or add notes to a file, OCR capabilities to be able to extract text from files, those are all things that come along for the ride with formerly Syntex, now SharePoint Premium. And that's something that I don't know about you, but like for my organization, I get people that ask about this all the time because especially for people who use Macs, for example, that's been par for the course. You can open up a file in preview and you can kind of just fiddle around with it as you need to.
I think you're giving it way more credit than it deserves, to be honest. The SharePoint preview experience is it's very, very, very rudimentary. Like it gets the job done, but it's only a couple dozen file types that it'll actually open. Multimedia, images, audio, video, yes, but like, why wouldn't it, right? It's in a browser, so there's no excuse not to. But like, guess what it can't do? Like TXT files, like CSV files. Like that's a pretty critical, basic thing that a lot of technical people, not just IT technical engineers, that you want to be able to send a file to somebody, but maybe you don't want them to be able to download it. So SharePoint has got that built right in, and you can say like, here's that TXT file, whatever. Can you check my code real quick or my Python script or whatever? Like you can't do that. It's actually like when they came out with the Autodesk, relationship where you could actually open up AutoCAD files.
Sure.
That's a fantastic thing, but like, what percentage of the world needs Autodesk versus TXT files or CSV files? Like that's
sure.
I don't know. I think in some ways it's the priority was to make that third-party connection and advertise that to a niche that would be really big on it. And then like that niche is also one that would be the first to walk away. So bring them back. And it's like some of the most basic file types out there that literally have been around for 40, 50 years aren't supported. And it's really frustrating, especially in a situation if you're trying to support external access or guest access, because if that organization, if you're doing any sort of protection on your data and you don't want it to leave your tenant, then
you can't download it.
You rely completely on that preview situation, and it's not great.
Yeah, no, and I think to that point, it's disheartening that they've decided this is a premium feature to enhance the file viewer experience.
Yeah.
Additionally, so I mentioned that they're also folding in what was previously known as SAM, SharePoint Advanced Management. So that's a lot of audit capabilities, the ability to archive SharePoint sites, a lot more enhanced capabilities to understand the landscape and manage it appropriately in the world of SharePoint. So all that's being folded into SharePoint Premium as well. That's all going to continue to exist today. SharePoint Premium is not available today. They haven't even announced pricing yet. But I would say that one, I'm unsurprised that they figured out how to monetize SharePoint. I am grateful that they at least took this streamlining approach of bringing together things that this is probably an easier sell for my organization now than it was when it was SharePoint Advanced Management and Syntex. Like those are hard stories to tell independent of each other.
I agree with that.
And in addition to that, they also made some really interesting announcements with respect to Stream. There's a whole lot to say about Stream, but in addition to all the cool SharePoint Premium stuff, because Stream is now a SharePoint-based product, they're getting a lot of the content enhancements as well. So that's going to be really interesting to keep an eye on. One of the big ones that we noticed, I think you and I were both kind of surprised by, finally, external sharing. So that's going to be an interesting thing to kind of see the end state of finally being able to share files externally. Now, is this going to be, or videos externally with the Stream experience? Is this going to be corporate YouTube? Maybe not at the jump, but it is going to be interesting to see where this leads us. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I want to sort of qualify what you just said there. So the big move from Stream Classic to Stream SharePoint, I think really the driver was to make those files accessible outside, because in Stream Classic, I think they were like blob storage Azure, which did not, which was separate enough that you couldn't actually share it. So you can take a Stream file today and share it with 100 people if you want to. But this service is more about like, we're sharing this to the broad audience out there, which interestingly, if you read all the blog posts related to the Ignite Book of News today, there are a lot of references to like visual assets related to a number of the services. Every single one of them goes to the Microsoft Corporate Communications tenant, their OneDrive. And you're able to, in OneDrive, share a video that can be shared with anyone, right? But if you do that with a video, it's not a super experience. And I think Microsoft is now sort of getting in the direction or moving towards the direction of being a competitor to YouTube as sort of a formal place to put video services that you have more control over, right? Like a video with captions, with chapters, with descriptions, you can overwrite. You can upload a new version of the video if you notice that there's an error in something. You can't do that on YouTube, right? You've never been able to do that on YouTube. So you have more control over the multimedia that you're dealing with, which from a corporate and business, process perspective can give you a lot more freedom and flexibility over it, which is really nice. And I think that's a positive direction that the Stream team is going in.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. And I hope that that's the direction that they're ultimately charging ahead towards. It's clear that they're looking in that space and investing in it and charging for it to boot. But all the same, we'll take progress where we can get it. So setting aside SharePoint Premium for a second here, there were a couple of additional kind of, we'll call them micro announcements. A few that spring to mind: Clipchamp, which is a acquisition that Microsoft made, I want to say like 2 years ago, something like that. It's been a minute.
Say, yep.
Which was just a web-based application that allowed you to manipulate videos, to trim them, to edit them, which is nice, especially when you think about the current experience with Stream, which was you upload a video, that's the video. There were some very kind of minute things you were able to do with it, like changing the start time, but really you didn't have a ton of flexibility with respect to trimming, to editing, to improving, to enhancing. Clipchamp is being made available to enterprise customers with E3, E5, as well as the business standard and premium suites. And they also announced Microsoft Designer is getting, and I'm quoting here, app integration experiences in Microsoft 365. So Matt, have you used Microsoft Designer?
A little bit, PowerPoint mainly.
Sure.
But, I do get a little bit here and there in Word, but not a huge user of it now.
So Microsoft Designer is Microsoft's Canva competitor. Have you used Canva?
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, and Canva is a relatively popular kind of web-based image editing, and now increasingly lots of other things editing platform. Microsoft had their own version available to consumers in Microsoft Designer, which was a very Canva-esque experience, enhanced with additional AI capabilities. So the ability to use DALL-E 2, for example. They've just recently announced DALL-E 3 is now available in Microsoft Designer, but it hasn't been available to enterprise customers. Now, Microsoft is moving towards this, and so there's two parts to this announcement here. The first is starting later this year and bleeding into early next year, they're going to start seeding kind of micro Microsoft Designer experiences into PowerPoint, into Word, so that you can use some of the capabilities that Microsoft Designer affords, like generating images from text, things to that effect, making visual edits to things. But they are also announcing separately that the Microsoft Designer app itself will be available in the coming months to enterprise customers. So it's kind of a, one step, two step kind of thing.
Sure.
But a welcome change all the same, because I think Microsoft has done a pretty good job of building up these two kind of stables of creative apps, that they're not pro apps by any stretch, but they're enough. They're the kinds of things that we're looking for to just kind of augment the things that currently are very painful when it comes to...
It's democratizing design and artistry, maybe for lack of a better term, but like those things are not like I know many places I've worked where like, oh, I want some really good stock imagery, and it's like, oh, well, only one person has the license to Adobe Stock,
right?
And it's like we only have so many images that we can use, and like they have the priority over being able to use those, and like that's a really annoying limitation, and it really negatively impacts the overall customer experience, user experience, whatever you want to call it, the end person's experience in a lot of these things. Whereas if you have something like this, you can finally like, okay, great, I can actually like tell it that I want, I don't know, a cat dancing in a clown hair, I don't know, for whatever reason.
There's
Where are you
that famous Wade creativity shining.
Yes, right. Thank you.
No, 100%. So it's a welcome addition. It'll be nice to see those in the hands of the regular Joe schmoes like you and I. And I mean, I know that I will put it to work organizationally. I think this is going to take a bite out of Canva's apple, to be sure. There's a couple of smaller announcements while we're on kind of the smaller announcements. Microsoft Loop, this kind of niche thing Microsoft is doing, probably not a big thing in their big picture strategy, is now generally available. Matt, have you even heard about Microsoft Loop?
Yes, I mean I present them that at conferences all the time. So
I know
the Loop app is available generally finally. But again, I like to tell people the Loop app is just it's a red herring. The actual usability and use case of Loop is the components. Right? Sure. Everybody says like, oh, this is the Notion knockoff. Like I don't care about the app. The app it's a 2023 version of OneNote. If the OneNote crazies out there would finally give up their OneNote from their cold dead hands.
Oh, they're coming for us now. You've done
it. Not you. It wasn't you. I said it. You guys. I live in Oakland in the Bay Area. You guys can come find me and kill me there. But my point being that the Notion cannot compete with the concept of the Loop components. And they've been out now for a few years. We're still waiting for them to continue to roll out to different experiences and services. But that whole, like, I put something in one place and it's basically just a rendered iframe of the same thing, no matter where I put it, whether it's a chat in Teams, whether it's in a box in a Word document. In the future, it's supposed to be, in emails, PowerPoint, Excel, all over the place. So you can have one single source of truth on something and you just render it in that right place so that whenever it gets updated, it updates everywhere, which that's a really big deal, right? I think
it is a big deal.
The app, whatever,
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think I probably am a little more excited about the app than you are. But all the same, it's exciting to have Loop more centered now than ever before. Hopefully this means that it'll actually show up in the waffle now. That's been a long time coming.
True citizen. Yeah.
A true citizen of the Microsoft 365 ecosystem.
Yep.
Another minor announcement I assume you'll be just as excited about. Microsoft Mesh is also going to become generally available in January. Did you know that Microsoft Mesh was still out there?
Yes. I didn't want to know that, but
and for anybody who's paid attention to the news over the last few months, Microsoft has really kind of dramatically deprioritized their metaverse investments, of which Microsoft Mesh was kind of the
shocker.
Yeah, I know. I'm just as surprised as you and I. If you go back as far back as when they first announced Microsoft Mesh, you and I, Matt, we saw it was going far. That was the biggest investment that Microsoft, moonshot, we called it.
It's amazing to me that like 2 years ago, this was the big thing where nobody knew that the generative AI revolution was coming, and that this thing that everybody in the tech world just needed something to grab onto, something to invest in, something to be excited about. And this is what they decided to do. So
12 more months.
Exactly. Right. And like, basically, yeah, it's Microsoft Mesh will be generally available in January, and nobody noticed.
I will say that they were clever about how they incorporated generative AI into that to be able to kind of mold and shape the metaverse spaces that you're in. So if you want a round table versus a U-shaped table, you want to change the color of the chairs, change the backdrop, that you can use generative AI for that.
And that sounds great, but I can't get people to actually update the meeting options of their meeting, let alone, I cannot imagine them, oh, by the way, did you know that you're in a completely customizable 3D space that you can do whatever you want with? And they're going to go, huh?
It's a good point. Now that you say it like that.
Nah.
Let
me ask you, because you're not a Teams guy, you're a Zoom guy.
Yeah.
Is Zoom on the Mesh or not the Mesh, the metaverse bandwagon? Were they ever?
No, they've done a couple of interesting things that I think kind of wink at them playing it close to the vest. Like they're keeping one toe in. They announced, I think last year, maybe it was early this year, a partnership with Meta, the Facebook company, to use their avatars for the metaverse in Zoom. That has not launched yet. Zoom currently has very rudimentary kind of avatars, which Microsoft kind of held up as the first iteration of Mesh, was their peg people, if you remember. But no, yeah, not particularly.
It's a lot of engineering effort.
It is a lot of engineering effort, and honestly, like the apps are bad. Like let's start with just like fixing the apps. New teams is progress. We're in the future.
Yeah, Mac OS.
So mesh, meh-ish.
That's good. Well done.
That's
All
good.
right,
That's for the people. All right, home stretch. Two last big things I want to talk about here. The first, Microsoft Planner. I can't begin to tell you how surprised I am that I'm excited to talk about Microsoft Planner. Like the redheaded stepchild of task management for the last
lean-headed stepchild.
Oh, my mistake. Yeah.
Although the new logo based on the new icon looked like it was very purpley, like very Microsoft 365 hexagon-y colors.
Yeah, so this is really interesting. So Matt, why don't you tell us a little bit about what's happening here with Planner?
So Microsoft Planner is that Trello Asana competitor that was a Kanban, however you like to pronounce it, tool set where you can have all these tasks out there in a free space that was not a to-do list. It was not a personal space. It's not Outlook tasks. It's a nice place for a team to come together in a very approachable, intuitive way to like assign tasks, due dates, start dates, who's doing it, what tags, all that kind of stuff. Planner's been around for a while. Actually, Planner's great. The one real downside to Planner is that there's no undo button and there's no recovery option if you delete something. Sure. Honestly, what the biggest fundamental issue with Planner is the lack of backup of plans and tasks and all that if you don't have a third-party backup tool. But
sure.
That competes with Microsoft To Do, which has replaced Outlook tasks everywhere but in the government cloud because reasons. And then Microsoft Project, which has Project Server, Project Client, Project for the web, Project Online, because as Jared said at the beginning, we're not so good at the branding thing. But
yeah, I don't know if this is just a branding problem.
but you and I actually before this we kind of debated a little bit because your interpretation of what this Planner update was different from my interpretation, and it turned out you were right. I will give you that.
Put
that will
that
be the
in the
one
books.
and only time that I will ever do such a thing, because otherwise you're typically wrong. But Project for the Web is being essentially retired and replaced by Planner as a central task management tool, both for team-based projects, but also for personal to-do tasks. So Microsoft To Do itself will still exist, still connect to Planner, which is great. Funnily enough, the Tasks by Planner and To Do app in Microsoft Teams is being renamed to Planner, which is what it should have been from day one. But yeah, it really comes down to Project Online is going to remain, but the Project for the Web experience is essentially being boiled down into this is now Microsoft Planner coming in early 2024, which is fantastic for people who do project management work. But never would I have expected Planner to even more cannibalize the project money printer experience that Microsoft has, because there's just so many people out there that rely on Microsoft Project as sort of the de facto project management tool out there because Microsoft provides it.
Yeah, no, I mean I couldn't have said it better myself. So To Do, Planner, Project for the Web, all being strung together into, for the first time, a unified, cohesive task management, project management, plan management tool, that's huge.
Yeah, especially considering it took us, was it 3 years we waited for recurring tasks in the regular Planner experience as of late? But by the way, in the background, we're that's probably why that was delayed by so much, because in the background they're basically rebuilding it.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
But this is, I will say that this is the single largest change that anybody could have hoped for Project on the Web, which has been dying on the vine. This kind of
the
pseudo
SharePoint
classic experience.
No.
Project Online. My mistake. I
was going to say Project for the Web is great because it's actually a modern experience. Project Online is awful.
Terrible. No, you're 100%
so
right.
bad.
Thank you for the clarification. Now
so
they're coming
bad.
for me.
So bad. Yes, no, as they should. Again,
That's what they
Oakland,
should.
Oakland, California. You just want to go there?
Yeah, that's. I'll send you the address and I'll put it in the show notes for anybody who wants to talk. But no, I mean, this is finally. It's taken them long enough, and I think Matt, you said it before we started recording the show. One of the most popular videos published on this channel is the what to use where when for to do and planner. And do you also talk about project in that video? Full disclosure, I've never watched that video because I just
That's quite okay. No, I would be happy to tell you all about it. No, it was Microsoft List versus Planner versus To Do.
That's right.
And there was one other. Oh, tasks by tasks for teams, essentially.
now defunct. Yeah.
Yes. And a lot of the comments are like, finally somebody has like acknowledged what all these things are, and it's like, because Microsoft has not done a good job of doing that. And like, I didn't even dive into the premium services. I went for the free stuff, right? So Project wasn't there. Third-party services weren't in it. But yeah, it was, 350,000 views or something. And just a lot of pent-up frustration from people based on the comments they have dropped in. So yeah, it's a very unclear, horizon for people on what to use in the Microsoft sphere, because there's nothing is right. There's all these things that can fill in like a 60% niche,
Right.
But nothing has been great.
I do find it interesting that they chose to run with the name Planner as opposed to Project, which I think kind of still has that big, like that big energy. This is Project. It's robust. It does everything.
And not just that, it's also an ERP, right? Like, it's a portfolio management tool, but like probably 90% of the people that use Planner these days, making up numbers here, but like are not licensed for Project and are not project managers or portfolio managers. They're just trying to get stuff done, right?
Sure. Which aren't we all?
Yeah.
So I think that brings us to our last topic. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, and I'll say again, this is just us brushing against the announcements Microsoft made today. I promise you we have too many thoughts about too many other things, but I wanted to close this out, Matt, with Copilot. Now, I want to start by acknowledging that even Microsoft, as the video at the front kind of indicated, has had to stop and acknowledge that the branding is bad. It's confusing. It's disjointed. It's so bad, in fact, and it's so confusing, they had to carve out 7 minutes in the biggest keynote of the year to explain the Copilot branding and where it applies and what things come with it. And you know what? I don't think they did a good job.
Ooh.
Yeah, Jared.
So I'm going to actually disagree with you. Because that just shows real open-mindedness right there. So I think that there has been terrible branding in lots of places. I actually don't think this is that bad. So don't get me wrong. I get the fact that like Bing Chat turning into Copilot is annoying, but like Bing Chat existed for a year and like we'll never remember it again in the future, right? Like Bing is a bad brand to begin with, only because it's a failed brand, right? But the concept of Copilot, which you and I were involved in a session at Ignite actually a little earlier, and one of the things I was talking about was the fact that like that session was about that Microsoft 365 Copilot, not the Power Platform Copilot, not the Bing Copilot, not the Admin Center Copilot, not the GitHub Copilot, but like the Copilot concept is this is the magic black box that just does the thing and takes the input that you put in, pings it off of the relevant information it has, and then gives you the best answer that it can based on what it knows. And like ignoring that concept, if you place it into every context, Outlook, Teams, Word, PowerPoint, GitHub, whatever, like you still kind of know what Copilot means. As long as the word Copilot is there everywhere, whether it's Copilot for Microsoft 365 or Copilot for or just the Microsoft Copilot in Bing or whatever, like you still understand like, oh, no, this is the smart chatbot. This is the one that actually does real stuff, right? I actually don't think that that's bad. As long as they call all of that, and as long as everything is Copilot, and then you just have to know like the 90% of people out there don't need to know that Microsoft 365 Copilot is not the same thing as Microsoft Copilot via Bing, right? They just need to know that they're going through Copilot. Now, you and I, as admins and people that license people, and like the payment process of all of that might matter.
Right.
I actually don't think that that the branding was all that bad. And the fact that the irony here to me was that Jared went off on this, our branding isn't really known for being so good, and here's a great example of this. And it's like, oh no, dude. Well, I got a whole list on the wall here of way worse examples. If you would just acknowledge those first, that would be so much appreciative of that.
Now, and I want to be clear. You're right. Copilot is in and of itself a good brand. I think that they've done a good job of holding up the Copilot premise, and it's a really strong metaphor for what it represents, which is, this partner alongside you that helps, to your point, the magic black box that does you type stuff and stuff comes out the other side and you go, how did it know? I do think that the way in which they approached getting to that point is what was bad. Because I still think that even with that 7-minute spiel, the fact that Microsoft Copilot and Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft 365 are so aligned, like they're so connected, they're so joined at the hip, and yet one is free and the other is $30 a month. And I think that they've made some progress, like the fact that there's a little tab up at the top for work or web.
I was just going to say that toggle is going to lead to a lot of enterprise data being lost to the outside world.
Yeah. And I think somebody's going to jump into the comments and they're going to say, no, because it's all enterprise protected. Not if you search it. Like, not if it goes to Bing and you search it, then it's in Bing. Like it's searching the web with that query. You went to the web. Yeah. Now, I'm sure that Microsoft has, some way of kind of hand waving through that. But the reality is it's exposed to the web in some small way. And I agree with you. I think there's going to be some confusion about that. I do know that Microsoft during the keynote, as well as following, did make some qualifying announcements that admins would have the ability to disable web search and Copilot for what was Bing Enterprise Chat, but it's now just Copilot. So that's good. And I think organizations are going to be pleased about that. Did any of the announcements today, Matt, make you feel like maybe this is worth 3 Cortanas, $30 per user per month, with a minimum spend of 300 users, with an annual commitment required through the end of your term of your existing contract? Like, you don't get to just buy it for a year and then go, no, you added that to if you have a multi-year agreement, you're in.
So I think Cortana for scheduling just gets a bad rap, because I think she's worth at least $15 or $20 a month. I'm just saying.
They started with 10. They undershot. That's why it failed.
They did. You're right. If they went with 30 from the beginning, I'm still kind of surprised that I'm still kind of surprised they didn't resurrect the Cortana brand, especially because it comes from Halo. Like, that's like
Oh, a beautiful. I mean, that's
it really is actually
the synergy between arms of a mega corporation. Like, you don't get better than that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm really surprised they didn't. But I will say that what I'm very pleasantly surprised by is Copilot Studio. So the fact that you can include it with your license, which was never announced until today, that you can go create your own custom GPTs that are going to be based off of whatever service you want to. So, like, I spent a number of years working in the chatbot industry. It is not easy to basically not have a magical black box. To connect all of the questions and answers to the right place. It's information management and knowledge management on overload, because it's not just making files and pages in an intranet and testing search results. It's literally connecting everything in the right place. And then, when somebody says, well, yeah, but what about X or what about Y? We don't have, you have to do all this error handling, essentially. That's just it's almost impossible, right?
Right.
So the fact that you can take a GPT that is essentially honed on all of the benefits stuff at work, or all of the travel stuff at work, or all of the, how to use XYZ or training things, is fantastic. And that is available to everybody with Copilot for that $30 a month. To your point, not just the $108,000 for the first year for 300 people, but actually through the end of your contract, which yeah, I hadn't really thought about it. But the GPT concept of it is a really big deal, I think.
Yeah, and so for anybody who's not sure what this premise of GPTs is, this was kind of pioneered by OpenAI, who makes the ChatGPT product, the consumer-facing product. It's available to their Plus tier of membership, which is $20 a month. So you can actually get a sense of what Microsoft is holding up here in its Copilot Studio, in its GPTs, by subscribing to ChatGPT Plus, which at least at the time of recording here, has temporarily been paused. They have paused people signing up for it. They do not want you to give them your money for unknown reasons. It sounds like they're getting very popular.
I hadn't heard that, because their whole concept of like their own little app store. I'm really intrigued to hear how both Google and Apple are going to deal with like an app store within an app on their platforms, or are Apple and Google going to get smart enough to make apps chat based by default and have an option for that, so that so OpenAI can push those in, and I as a user of iOS, I don't have to deal with OpenAI. I still just deal with Apple. But of course, it's not so much about that. Apple wants its cut, right? Like, obviously.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. And OpenAI has announced they're going to charge. They're going to let people charge for their little GPTs. And GPTs, just in a big picture sense, are your ability to create little. You might call them virtual agents, power virtual agents. In fact, this was kind of an understated part of the announcement. Copilot Studio is, for all intents and purposes, the successor to Power Virtual Agents, which, as we understand it, the brand is being phased out. Power Virtual Agents will be no more, and it'll be deferred to Copilot Studio moving forward. So you'll be able to create these little mini chatbots that are based on specific instructions and specific information. So if you've got a PDF with your expense policy, you can create an expense Copilot that can be interfaced with through the Copilot for Microsoft 365 experience. So you can ask it a question and ultimately kind of pre-prime the Copilot, this little expense Copilot or whatever, to jump in and have all the context, have all the information it needs, without having to just hope that Copilot has had enough time and enough context to figure this stuff out for itself. Like, you can just kind of package that up into a nice, neat little ball, which is awesome.
Yes. But so like that, I don't want people to walk away thinking that, oh, great, if I already have like an FAQ document out there, that's going to be sufficient, or I have a governance document that's going to be sufficient, because it's not. You have to like that document, because it doesn't matter anymore. It's like the PDF or like I don't know, let's say the library in a SharePoint site, like have as many files as you want, but like they have to get into the concepts that are allowed. So like you almost have to think about it like, how would you talk to somebody? Write that down. Write it down.
Yeah.
The more you write down, the better, so that it has more context to work with and it has more factual statements to work with. Because if you just have a 15-page, governance document on how to use Concur in your organization and how the policies on getting reimbursed for things match, like you're going to cover the big picture stuff, but I'm going to guarantee you that half of your questions are things that are not in that document, right?
Yeah.
So whatever you answer, every email that you send on regarding this, dump that into that file, dump it into the file. It doesn't matter how it looks. It doesn't matter how it's formatted. It just has to be there for it to be able to be consumed by the Copilot.
And I think that really kind of beautifully ties into what you were talking about earlier, and the magic of what these generative AI models represent, as opposed to the old way of doing, which was, blind error handling. Like, you had to kind of just assume that people were going to ask the dumbest questions, or that they were going to ask it unrelated questions. Like, you had to build all of that in, versus priming it with, I like to think of it as the old way of building chatbots was you had to give it, 30 different recipes. And you had to hope that somebody was going to come in and ask for one of those 30 recipes.
Yeah.
Versus
and five or six ways of saying, I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're talking about because I'm not trained on that. Because
you
don't want the same thing every time, right? Like, but now GPT can actually come up with like different ways to say that automatically, right? Like,
so you can give it the ingredients now. You can say, here's all the stuff, and here's some ways they've been connected in the past. But go with it. Like, run with it. We're still at risk, and Microsoft was clear, but not as clear this year as they have been in the past, that this thing is still at risk of producing false information, and that's something that I think is still
Can we talk
really
about?
important.
I'm very disappointed.
Where did usefully wrong go? Jared.
Jared. So disappointed.
It was good to see him.
It was. It always is.
Jared, come on the show. We'd love to have you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Matt, there's so much stuff. Like even in just the short time that you and I have been talking here, I assume we're gonna cut it down to like 7 or 8 minutes.
At least, something like that.
What do you think is your big takeaway from today? Like, what's something that either you're looking forward to, something you were disappointed you didn't see? Are you heartened? Are you concerned? What's in your heart right now?
I'll start with what I'm concerned about. I'm concerned that the Microsoft 365 of yesterday is being completely overshadowed, and that all these little platforms, products, tools, apps, brands are being overlooked now. And the nuance that a lot of us have developed skill sets in are not as relevant's not the right word, but not as prominent any longer. And Copilot, as good as it is kind of taking over everything, especially at conferences. I can speak personally that a number of conferences I've been to, conferences I've advised my colleagues to go to, they come back and they're like, I didn't really learn a whole lot because Copilot doesn't exist yet. It was all one big marketing pitch. And then for a client of mine that's in like a government cloud or especially a high government cloud, they're not going to see that for years, I don't know about years, but like a long time. And like, how do you incorporate all these new features, not Copilot related, and continue developing the Microsoft 365 experience that doesn't have Copilot in it? Because there's going to be, like today, they mentioned very proudly, and I find it so odd that they're proud that they have 10,000 paying customers for Teams Premium. Like, sure. Big deal. Like, what? That number has been talked about, I swear, for like months at this point. Like, right. So what? So like you have, I forget what the number was. It was a couple 100 million monthly active users for Teams. At this point.
It was like 324 million or something like that.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was. I thought it was something close to the population of the U.S. And it's like that's notable, right? Yeah. 10,000, right, customers. Now I don't know how many users that is, but they said customers specifically. Sure. But like once you add these things on top, and like Copilot's expensive, a lot of money. It's a huge investment for a very unknown outcome, right? It's hoping that people will use it. It's hoping that your change management plan and your training plan in an era or an arena that nobody's ever proven to work in the first place, right? It's brand new and it's cool and all that, but like even I don't use ChatGPT very often, right? Like,
no, well, you're wrong.
Am I a monthly user of ChatGPT? Maybe. Like I might use it 20 times in a month and then skip the next 2 months because I don't really have like Google is still good enough for me, and it's just my natural habit to go there. But it's all this stuff being kind of put on the sort of not back burner, but like I'm not sure.
It's being buried. Like there's so much stuff being built on top of it that you kind of forget that there was even a first floor to begin with.
I mean, hey, dude, a year ago, Microsoft Loop was the big thing. Yeah. And right now they just announced general availability, and nobody heard that bell ring. They just didn't, But at the same time, on the positive side, we've talked about this before. This is the beginning of a new paradigm of computing. It just is, especially like ChatGPT can exist and can have 200 or 100 million monthly active users or whatever from OpenAI directly. Like that's impressive. Don't get me wrong. I realize you look back on when did Facebook get there? When did Instagram get there? When did Twitter get there? But this is a paradigm shift in the way humans will interact with technology. It's going to take a little while for people to get used to it. Again, I think that there's not to be, I don't know, explicitly ageist, but I think there's going to be a huge difference between Z and Alpha generations and Millennial X generations, and especially Baby Boomer generation. in how they interact with this stuff. I have a hard time trying to get my brain to tell a computer to do something because I know that it can't do it. So I've always had to do that workaround, and my brain is now molded to do smart Google searches based on the workaround, which is that the system can't do what I want it to do if I tell it to do it in natural language. And you would think that like, oh, well now like, well, I've been sucking my stomach in for 30 years now. I can finally let it out. And it's like, no, I can't. No. That's just not how it works. That's not the way my brain has been molded in the last 30 years of me learning and becoming a human in the early 21st century, you know?
Yeah, no, I totally hear that. I think I share all of those sentiments. I think I'm excited. People have made a lot of bones about the minimum 300 user threshold, but that's
totally.
I mean, that's finite. Like, that's not going to be there forever.
I agree.
I mean, Microsoft.
Not to say that it's stupid and annoying.
Sure,
but also
absolutely. Like, not
for a long time, probably.
Yeah, I think Microsoft needs people who are like serious about making the investment because I mean, Matt, the session that you gave earlier today that I helped moderate on behind the scenes, there's still a lot of like, you better do this first, you better do that first, you better do this first. Man. And like, hey, there's, yes, those are all still the same best practices they've been for, 10, 15, 20 years. Make sure that you age out content that's no longer relevant, things like that. Be clear about your information infrastructure or architecture rather. But I think it's also an acknowledgement that the tech is the tech is going to solve for those problems. But until it does, Microsoft needs organizations that are going to put their money where their mouth is. Like if you want it, you better play ball. And at the same time, Microsoft is going to figure out organizations that scale where it works well, where it doesn't. We're going to link to the work trends report that Microsoft released today in the show notes, so you all can check out that 77% of people allegedly would rather choose Copilot over free pizza. And personally, I'm not surprised. I think if you had asked, do you want free coffee, that would be a very different response.
I also think that they were very smart to jump on the meme of hating corporate America where they give you pizza parties instead of actually giving you raises. So it was built into the back of people's minds right now. Also, are we talking like a Pizza Hut personal pan pizza? Or are we talking all you can eat?
Free pizza. Free pizza.
Yeah, but free pizza. All right. Well,
free
pizza.
Have
a very clear definition of what that means.
I'm going to CC's Pizza, and it's an all-you-can-eat buffet, just slices. Parting thought, last thing I'm disappointed by, not a single word about Microsoft Places. Not a single word.
You were totally right. That is a really good point. And I feel like that's much more practical for people in a day-to-day perspective these days.
Yes, and I'm irritated by it. They announced it at Ignite last year. They announced that it was going to ship in early 2023. It is November. Now, I happen to know that they've been piloting it and they've been quietly testing it. But I can tell you with absolute certainty that did not make anywhere into the book of news. There was no hat tip to it. And I think that particularly as organizations increasingly build their investments in hybrid, Microsoft Places should be here already. The fact that you can't even RSVP for in-person versus virtual, which is a thing that they promised 2 years ago.
I was just going to say that I've gotten a number of questions and like, wait, how is this not a thing yet? Where people are like, hey, my organization isn't really remote at all or not hybrid at all. But like sometimes we want to be, and we don't really know a great way to tell people. So we want a group calendar or like a shared calendar or whatever to like do that. And it's like, you really shouldn't have to do that. Like Outlook for the web is able to, set where you are, and your scheduler, the scheduling assistant says like, oh,
still
this
not on the desktop
location.
But
the desktop app is a no-go. And it's like, what? It's 2023. How is this possible? The pandemic started 5 years ago. Or sorry, not 5, 3 years ago. Like that's
We're
a
coming
long
up on
time
the fourth anniversary.
Yeah, you're right. COVID. You're right. And it's really bad that you're going to celebrate that as a 4th anniversary. But my point is that like your reaction to that was not as good as I was hoping. But the point is that like Microsoft has to do this too. Like they are actually a very, very, very hybrid company. You would think that they'd be like banging the doors down on the Exchange team to be like, what are you people even doing in here right now? Oh, we were working on Outlook One. Like what? Like, come on, very basic features.
It drives me nuts, and they've announced all this stuff before. They specifically announced the ability to RSVP in person versus online. I don't even think it was 2. I think it might have been like 2.5, 3 years ago. This was an early COVID announcement. Google shipped it almost immediately after COVID started.
Tisk. Yep.
So that's where I'm leaving it on a negative note, because I want somebody at Microsoft to sit on that and do something about it. Say it out loud. Like,
agreed. Acknowledge it.
Acknowledge it.
Jared, your branding is bad. Let's talk about some other things that are bad. My goodness.
Matt, it's always good to see you.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that about does it. Thank you so much for watching. Sean, hey, enjoy the rest of Ignite in person. That is a very nice little thing that you're able to do there. I might have been able to present and, put my face on some things, but I didn't actually get to go. So I'm very jealous of you being able to have a good time in person, seeing all those folks. And, I'm sure you'll, what time is it? So you got the evening ahead of you. So
the night is young. Fun. I'm off to my my third Ignite party of the week so far, and I am tired.
Not one drink paid for, I'm sure.
No,
but
no. Actually, as a government employee, I'm very dutiful about not accepting gifts.
Oh, that's fair. Yep. Nope. That I can appreciate. Anyway, as always, a like and subscribe is much appreciated. Leave a comment below to start the discussion. Sean Bugler, it is so great to see you again. Not that I haven't seen you, but just haven't seen you in
this context,
public, like, kind of thing. Thank you so much for joining me this week, and we will have another video soon, deep diving into the Ignite topics, and then we'll be following a more regular schedule after that to be determined. But that is the plan, because life is not as crazy. Yeah, we're back.
We're back.
Okay, wait a minute. That's my job. I'm sorry, but when there's a corporate
Damn it, I was doing so good on the straight face too.
So was I. Okay.